Today's story is The Door at the Edge of the Universe Part 5 Finale by MellonTheFelon. Freddy's father had a complicated history. Never was this fact more salient to him than at the moment a SWAT team kicked in his front door and proceeded to turn his life upside down. Acting on unspecified evidence of child abuse occurring in his home, the operators methodically searched the building for weapons and booby traps, and then arrested him. All of his efforts to avoid detection, his intercepting of Praxis agents' nightly reports, his discovery of the portal to the door and its prognosticatory powers did not, in the end, save him. The SWAT operators were, in truth, surprised to find nothing of value to their investigation on the premises. Such disappointments were not uncommon in the grand scheme of things, but were certainly so in situations that called for state violence of this magnitude. Even stranger were Freddy's replies to the operators' questions. All had seen victims of child abuse before, and none had encountered one like Freddy. He was not quiet, fearful, or distrusting. He did not seem either relieved at his father's arrest nor fearful of retribution for it. He was confused and vocal in his desire to see his father, to know where they were taking him. But the operators carried out their duty, as they were trained to do. The trouble began when Freddy was born. Instantly, his father knew that he was not like the other children of his race. Indeed, this was to be expected, for no human Praxis union had ever produced viable offspring. And though Tanya died in childbirth, Freddy was very much alive. But this ineffable and irrational intuition that Freddy was unique in more than the trivial genetic sense was nothing his father could verbalize or confirm until that night, when he reported the birth to his superiors. They informed him that the child must be surrendered to the Guardians. Through him, they explained, control could be exercised over the door for the first time in living memory. No longer would they be relegated to Guardians and Watchers. This was the rationale behind choosing such a backward and barbaric culture as the site of the program. Freddy's father was somehow not surprised by this information, as if it were merely a suspicion he had carried with him always, that he and his progeny were destined for greatness, and don't we all? But despite the promises and congratulations he meted out, he had no intention of giving away his only son, and so he destroyed any remnants of his former life, any technology or trinkets brought from beyond the stars, knowing that they could be used to track him. Thus he and Freddy began a new life as permanent denizens of this earth, separated now merely by biology and no longer by intergalactic politics. But all good things, as they say. Au revoir, my friend. May your name be spoken through the ages, and in that way postpone the final death for all time. And it was through Ben that I first heard of Freddy and his father. By this point in our checkered friendship, I had learned to trust only those words intoned in the queer, emotionless voice which sometimes seized him. And thus it was that he first described them. What I gleaned from these impassive divinations was strange indeed. Ben spoke of a child, of the stars, who could see the door and could furthermore control it. He told me where he lived, and that if I wanted to save him, that I must hurry. Agents of darkness conspired to spirit him away. Out of a passive and morbid curiosity, I followed Ben's directions and arrived at a house under police quarantine. It was apparently some kind of terrible crime scene, and I slipped away before my presence brought about undue attention. When I reported this to Ben, he informed me that I had been too late. He directed me to 2 more addresses. One of them was a prison, and the other a location of the boy's foster home. But he warned me, these were no ordinary foster parents. They too were children of the stars, and I should prepare myself before meeting them. Before I did this, I decided to pay a visit to the prison and ask for the prisoner that Ben had identified, but this part of the story you already know. Jimmy Dalton had never before had the honor of being a foster parent. Neither had he acted in a parental role of any kind. He did so now for the child who was the key to the door. With the press reporting on his untimely death and his biological father thoroughly discredited, The boy was effectively under their control. It was not long before he and his superiors discovered the true extent of the boy's power, not the least of which was mastery over the flow of time. This confirmed their wildest hopes, and allowed them to set into motion their endgame. In order to place humankind on the path of destruction, a certain world leader must meet his end, and for that to happen, Praxis agents must manipulate the past. The target had been chosen long ago. A man referred to in obscure and arcane memoranda as an American Marine in good health. This, my dear reader, an epithet you may soon choose to reject, is when I was fully convinced to take up the strange cause thrust upon me by the unfortunate association described within these pages. Quite by accident, my hand brushed against the back of Ben's head and made contact with the object, to which I have previously alluded, which had come to be permanently embedded there. The result was a sudden and violent downloading of information directly into my brain. I did not experience it as a montage of sights and smells, but as a sudden possession of all the knowledge Ben had gleaned over the past several months. This impressed upon me the true existential nature of the threat. Ben's masters were a faction of the Praxis who were, to put it mildly, less than pleased with the aims and methods of the Guardians of the Door. They knew of the plan to brainwash Oswald, and more importantly, they knew of the world in which Grace would be forced to live. Genocide of unparalleled scale. And so I made plans to visit Freddy and his new parents that night. He received me with surprise, but I explained to him who I was and was allowed inside. "I want to talk to you about Freddy," I told Jimmy when we were seated on the opposite sides of the desk. "Whatever you've heard about our intentions, I can assure you that they are wildly..." But I did not let him finish. No, you misunderstand me. I do not disapprove of your aims. I simply don't believe you have all the information you will need to execute your plan. Jimmy appeared startled, but I did not allow this to dissuade me. Yes, you see, I'm aware of your little factional rivalries and the trouble the liberal elements in your government are causing. A good friend of mine has inadvertently, mind you, revealed certain secrets which, upon my disclosing them to you, will assure that you can remove them as a factor. I am aware that you have been searching for their mothership for quite some time, and I am prepared to reveal its location to you, as well as their battle strategy in the future conflict over the annihilation of Earth. But why would you do such a thing? Jimmy asked. If you know all that, then surely you must know that telling me those things will ensure the complete extermination of the human race. I smiled and looked back at him through mild eyes. Because I see the wisdom of your position, Jimmy. Do you know the history of my kind? Yes, of course you do. But I should like to recount an arcane corner of it if you do not mind. As a child, my parents were fond of my suffering. The fact of my survival is nothing short of a miracle, but as one illustrative example, I should like you to hear this account. My sister and I were playing in our backyard when I knocked over a table containing my father's favorite watch. In a fit of rage, he demanded to know which of us was responsible, and my sister, the angelic, innocent girl that she was, sought to shield me from his wrath by taking responsibility. He, however, decided to punish us both, in a way, and handed me his belt, and directed me to strike her with it while he held her face down over and over again until my arms grew tired, and still he screamed for me to continue over her tears and heedless of her apologies. My race is indeed a cancer, Jimmy. Our existence is a heresy and continuing debasement to conscious creatures everywhere. There will be only one beautiful moment in the history of the human race, and it shall endure in the minds of men at the instant for their destruction, when the cancellation of human consciousness is at hand. Because it will cleanse my kind of their immeasurable sin. Because it is the only remedy that could. What other justice could suffice for the tortured souls in their uncounted millions? And what other course could ensure with perfect certainty the continuance of unborn infinitude within the beatific void. And Jimmy nodded at this, and accepted my proposition was no trick. I gave him the information he needed, and leaving his presence, melted once more back into the night. A phenomenon often occurs at the moment before death in which the subject experiences an intense and inexplicable euphoria. Neuroscience tells us that this is merely the inevitable result of cascading neurotransmitters and global neuronal firing. The bullet which ended John F. Kennedy's life briefly activated every neuron in his brain and allowed him to feel and see with perfect clarity everything that was to pass. He saw the door closing, and knew that it was doing so exactly in time with his own life energy as it seeped slowly from his neurons, nevermore to return. Freddie's father convulsed on the medical table as the deadly chemicals entered his veins. His executioners, with the benefit of praxis medical knowledge, had chosen the right ones to ensure his demise. And as the life drained from his body, the terrible totality of time and space stretched before him. But it was the door, and its never-ceasing movement, which was the last image to grace his consciousness. It was closing, and whatever forces lay on the other side were once more denied entry into our realm. Grace huddled in her bunker beneath the ground, had not eaten for many days, and knew that the next few moments would be her last. As her body and mind began to shut down, she entered that liminal space within which sits the door, and where all doomed souls are granted eternal and abiding knowledge for just a moment. And perhaps it really is this which destroys them. A wise man once suggested the strength of a mind might be measured by the amount of truth it can endure. Our kind is weak indeed. Grace knew what Kennedy had learned, that the door was closing, though still she did not understand why the forces which had conspired to deny her race its status as denizens of conscious experience had wished this eventually to occur. And never would she. For in the next instant, she was gone. This ended the long, terrible saga of human interactions. Puppets, dancing across this hollow stage, singing fire into the void of cruelty and screaming the tortured entreaties of passing idola, yielding as morning mist exhaled into the grave. Many ancient creation myths posit so-called ex nihilo creation, something from nothing. But infinitely more exquisite is the reverse. So that, my friends, was the final part of The Door at the Edge of the Universe by MellonTheFelon, wrapping it all back up to the assassination of Kennedy. That being the event that would set into motion the end of everything, right? Fantastic story, man. Absolutely loved it, Mellon. And I hope to work with you again in the future, because you did this fantastically. I loved it. Loved everything about it, so. I hope you guys enjoyed the story, and if you did enjoy it, please do consider joining the Nevermore. To join the Nevermore, all you have to do is do things like hit that subscribe button and then the bell icon next to it, and then you're part of the Nevermore. You can also do things to support the growth of the Nevermore, such as, finding me on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, probably somewhere else, I don't know where else I am, and doing things like supporting me on Patreon and Ko-fi. All of these optional, and every single one of them greatly appreciated. Also, I hope you guys have a great day and a fantastic weekend. I just wanted to let you know I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next video. But until then, sleep well.